Hello and welcome to Verbal to Visual. Today we're going to address a question that often comes up for visual note takers who are taking in a bunch of interesting ideas and want to capture those ideas on the page, but find that they end up trying to cram too much onto a single page. So today we'll be looking at how to avoid cluttering your sketch notes. Here's one way to think about this situation. As you're listening to a podcast or reading a book or watching a presentation, there's lots of ideas coming your way. What I encourage you to do is to set up some sort of a filter that helps you decide which of those ideas are worth capturing. Because the key here to not cluttering your sketch notes is to not try to capture everything. So I think that's one important thing to let go of here at the beginning, that desire to capture every single detail. Instead, start by defining what that filter will be for you. What's a guiding question that you might establish to decide which ideas are worth capturing? What do you want to get out of the information that you're taking in? By identifying some sort of a filter up front that will keep you from trying to capture everything. Another thing to keep in mind as we look at this question of how many ideas to include on a single page is that white space itself is a note-taking tool that you can use to separate ideas. That white space will allow your brain to quickly identify which set of marks go together and which don't. Because the thing that we're trying to avoid here, the problem with cluttered sketch notes, is that they become less useful to you, the messier and the more crowded that they become. And I think that even by acknowledging that white space is one of the tools at your disposal, that makes it easier to keep some white space on the page. In addition to keeping those two things in mind, I also think it's worth deciding up front between two primary options. Decide whether you're going with just a single page of notes or a multi-page approach. Sometimes it's nice to just limit yourself to a single large page. But if you do that, if you want to put that constraint on your note-taking process, then along with it, I think you need to acknowledge that it's just the highlights that you're going to capture, rather than the complete picture of the book you're reading or the podcast you're listening to. I think by setting that up as part of the intention behind your notes of only capturing the highlights, I think that helps you to set the right expectations going in. It takes off some of the pressure and allows you to focus in just on the things that really stand out, the ideas that clearly pass through your filter. But if you'd like to remove that limitation so that you can capture lots and lots of ideas, then the multi-page approach is better for you. That allows for more of a comprehensive capturing of the ideas you're taking in. And I use comprehensive-ish here to reinforce that you're not trying to capture everything. Even with a multi-page approach, you still need some sort of a filter to decide what makes it onto the page and what doesn't. So that's kind of the high-level question to ask yourself first, whether you want to limit yourself to a single page of notes or allow for multiple pages. From there, let's dig a layer deeper and look at some specific note-taking processes that are well-suited to each. If you're going with the single-page approach, you might try using a mind map as your note-taking structure. I've got a whole other video that explores what the combination of mind mapping and sketchnoting might look like, but this general approach of posing a question or a topic in the center of the page and then capturing some details as you move radially outward from there, connecting ideas with lines, that's a great way to capture a set of ideas on a single page. Another approach that's kind of the cousin of the mind map is a flowchart, in which you connect ideas using arrows to capture the overall flow. Here are a few examples of some text-heavy flowcharts that I've used while listening to podcasts. I like the flexibility of how those can grow throughout a podcast conversation. Another approach that I think is well suited for single-page note-taking is one that I've called the brick road approach, in which you fill up the page one imagined rectangle at a time, with each rectangular chunk of space on the page dedicated to its own mini sketch note of the next idea you want to add in. That's the approach that I took with these sketch notes from the 30 Days of Genius series with Chase Jarvis. In this one, his interview with Marie Forleo. Those three examples then show you how you might approach some single-page sketchnoting. What I like about those is that there's a clear stopping point. Once you've filled the page, you can call it good for the day. But there are some cases in which you don't want to do that. times when you'd like to move from the first page onto the next one as you continue capturing ideas. So let's next look at a handful of approaches to multi-page sketchnoting, starting with the one we just mentioned. I think the brick road is flexible enough to handle single page or multi-page sketchnoting, because unlike the mind map or flowcharts, you don't have to worry about connecting one idea to the next, something that's hard to do as you move from the first page to the second page. Instead, once you've filled the last rectangle on the first page, you can just flip to the next one and keep going. That's what I did with the recent sketchnotes I took of Tim Ferriss's interview with Neil Gaiman. And since you know that you've always got more pages to turn to, you don't have to stress about trying to cram a bunch of the details onto any single page. I also think that a column by column approach is a good way to tackle multi-page sketchnoting. In this case, you work top to bottom, left to right, as you alternate between sketches and text to capture whatever you're listening to. If you're using larger paper, you can divide each page up into a handful of columns, or if you're using a smaller notebook like I did when capturing these sketch notes, again from the Tim Ferriss podcast, this time with guest Jim Collins. In this case, I treat each individual page as its own column, so that structure is already built in, and I just move top to bottom, left to right, using as many pages as I need. And finally, a third approach to multi-page sketchnoting to help you avoid cluttering your sketchnotes is the Cornell method with sketchnotes added in. You might already be familiar with the Cornell structure, and if you'd like to see a deep dive into how you might merge the Cornell method with some sketchnoting techniques, I've got a whole video dedicated to that, outlining what that combination could look like and sharing some notes that I took while digging into a resource from Blake Bowles called How to Live Nowhere, which explores a nomadic or semi-nomadic lifestyle. So if you feel like you've been trying to cram too many ideas into your sketch notes and that cramming has made them less useful for you, then I hope these ideas can show you how you might avoid that problem to help the note-taking process itself go a little bit more smoothly in the moment, and also to make those artifacts of your learning more useful in the future, to help you put those ideas into action, which is, of course, the whole reason you're taking notes in the first place. If you'd like some more resources to help you bridge that gap between ideas and action as you develop and put to use your sketchnoting skills, then check out the courses available at verbaltovisual.com. Good luck as you continue immersing yourself in interesting ideas and filling some pages with interesting sketchnotes along the way, without overfilling them. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Until then.